This episode is sponsored by Launch. Are you an insurance agent that is tired of quoting business to try and find a better premium to win new deals? Are you looking for a way to differentiate and stand out from your competition? Well, look no further than Launch. Launch is an industry-leading software platform that gives you pre-built assessments that you can walk through with your prospect. Launch automatically calculates your prospect's risk score, and this allows you to show your prospect the areas you can fix to negotiate better premium and coverage with underwriters. Offer more value to your clients, turn missed sales into closed business, and most of all, become a better advisor to your clients. Visit getlaunch.io today to get more information on how you can use Launch to win more BORs starting right now. That's getlaunch.io to learn more.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast, where we focus on breaking down risk management problems bit by bit until we find a solution. If you would like to discuss anything you hear on GPP with us, please reach out using the links in the description. Enjoy today's episode.
All right, well, welcome to Getting Past the Premium, Jamie. We're excited to have you on the show.
Thanks, Elliot.
Yeah, Ryan, good to see you as well.
Yep. Thanks, Elliot. And Jamie, nice to meet you. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation. Yeah, Jamie, we're excited. You are joining us from South Africa as well. So thank you for, being up. It's 7 o'clock there, so not too bad PM.
Yeah, not too bad.
So thanks for joining us, kind of in the off hours. But I wanted to just have you give your background, what Synatic is, what you do for, the industry and things, because I think it's going to lend itself to a really cool conversation around how we handle data in the industry and what we do with it and all those things. But let's start with kind of who you are and what you guys do first.
So my name is Jamie Piers. I'm VP of Sales and Alliances over at Synatic, and we are a data automation and integration engine. We're backed by a professional services team that delivers that, but ultimately we're a platform play that makes data move between systems and into an aggregated area. Now, a lot of people get super frightened when they hear integration, and all they do is they attach I don't know what that means, ? And dollar price tag. And then they kind of crap themselves and go Well, how the hell are we going to handle that? So we in a nutshell, what we do is we do two life cycles of data. We do what we call the aggregate life cycle and the integrate life cycle. So aggregation is bringing data together so we can get a single view of the customer. And we can do all sorts of cool things like reporting on top of that data. Integration is taking that data and moving it into the ecosystem surrounding your AMS. So whether you're on, all the way from Hawksoft, AMS 360, Sagitta, Applied Epic, Nextshare, whatever it is, we move data out of that, make it reportable by aggregation. If you've got multiple AMSs, we bring that into the picture, and then we push that data into surrounding ecosystems like InsurTech and your CRM.
Interesting. So that brings up a series of questions in my brain, but let me take a step back. We were talking before the show, just you had gone out to InsurTech Connect and Applied Net and really felt like you had some good takeaways from those. And I just would be curious, because I think you deal with a lot of InsurTech on a regular basis, I'm guessing, and just technology in general. Yeah. So what were your takeaways from not only those conferences, but just where we're at with InsurTech and technology in the insurance industry, and where do you think kind of that's going in the future?
Yeah. So takeaways from ITC and AppliedNet were really that there's two key pain points for independent agents at the moment is A, my reporting sucks and I can't get to my data, and B, I can't get my data into my CRM. So there's a proliferation of Salesforce in the industry. It's a great platform, and we're big supporters of Salesforce. We do a lot of work with Salesforce. Ultimately, Salesforce is a data-hungry engine, so you need to feed it data. If you don't get data out of the AMS into Salesforce, you're going to struggle to get the full capability set out of Salesforce. So those are our two biggest takeaways. And I had one conversation with a warm lead who we've got a presentation to next week, and literally it was he came up to this to our booth and he said, like, what do you guys do? And I said, like, what do you do? So he was like, we're an agency. Cool. Are you are you a mid, small, or big agency? Mid. Cool. So you're on Applied Epic or AMS 360. Applied Epic. Okay, so you struggle to integrate your data to Salesforce, you can't pull your reporting properly, and you can't automate your data into your InsurTechs. And how do you get data back into Applied Epic? And it was like, that was the pitch. The pitch ended there, give or take. I mean, there was some niceties around that, and there was like pleasantries, but that was give or take it. And that's effectively where people are really struggling at the moment, is just that formative stage of getting data out into the CRM and getting data back in again, and then talking about just running reports. So in terms of InsurTech, that was a massive takeout for us. Is we've worked hard on our talk tracks and to make sure that we're hitting those pain points. To answer the second question, where the industry's going, is we're finding more and more InsurTechs are realizing that creating an additional system and making people move data between system A and InsurTech, system B, manually, actually pretty much detracts from the ability of the InsurTech. So our insurance guy who insures Synatic was saying exactly that. He's part of the ISU group, and he was saying, you know, what's the point in adding in another InsurTech if you're just putting in more manual work to get the data to the InsurTech? And ultimately, we're working with parties like, we've got a wonderful, flourishing relationship with Wonderwrite. We're working closely with the likes of Fero, and what we're doing there is they need the customer data and they need their contact data so that they can run their application process. So we get that automatically from 360 into Wonderwrite. Happy days. What happens when Wonderwrite produces the application? We put that back in as an activity into AMS 360. Relatively simple integration, but we've gone and worked with Wonderwrite and said, well, how do we make that pain point solved and checked? And we then go with Wonderwrite to each of their customers and solve that. So really where we're seeing it going is getting tighter and tighter around the AMSs, even though the AMSs present some level of challenge there.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on that.
That was a very nice way to put that.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I often address that one head on. Like, there's a big difficulty with what AMS and Applied Epic and Sagita are. Is like, they're deep applications, right? I mean, like, they have got a lot of functionality in there, and they're exceptionally powerful because of that. The challenge is they can't be all things to all people. It's physically impossible. Any one person who thinks they can conquer this data challenge individually on their own is obscenely overestimating their capability set. It just is what it is. So it's why we work hard on things like going to AppliedNet and being relevant and having relevant talk tracks, partnering with Vertafore and saying, like, how do we get this data in and out of Vertafore better, getting an intimate knowledge of those AMSs so that we can solve those pain points.
Totally. Yeah. And you know, you do look at Applied Systems having as much grief as we want to give to those companies. You know, it's turning the Titanic, you know, but at the end of the day, they have the resources to do it. And some of those, the smaller AMS, where I think that they definitely serve a purpose and are very, you know, a lot of times functionally in feature sets are better. They also can't really handle, say, a large agency, or
correct.
You know, there's just things like that. And so we'll see where it goes. I mean, Applied Systems is doing a lot of good stuff. You know, I'm curious to see where Ivans goes and some of those things. So, you know, I think we're in an interesting and a cool spot where they're also being pushed now by some of these other smaller systems that are kind of coming out and taking some market share, albeit probably on the smaller side, but they're pushing them, and they're going to have to innovate a bit, and they're going to have to do things where they open up the architecture to have better APIs and things like that. So really curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like, you go and take Better Agency, and Will Shaw and his team are doing a fantastic job, and they've got a great solution there. But they will be the first to tell you, like, they're not going to target a 500-person organization or a 1,000-person organization. It's not in their ICP right now, because they know what they're targeting and they're good at that. So like, go and do that cool stuff. Like that's what the game is, and they will grow out in time. And big props to Will and his team. Like they're growing cool stuff and they're doing cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, again, I think it just does nothing. If nothing else, it pushes the technology side of the industry forward.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Jamie,
Yeah.
what?
Rising tide lifts all ships, eh?
That's right. Yep.
For sure. Jamie, what you're when you're talking with agencies who specialize in, mid market business, what data are they really trying to understand in their agency? Like the top 1 or 2 priorities, what data are they really trying to understand and why?
So, sure, there's a lot of data they're trying to understand. So, I mean, it's
like
scary. Yeah,
I can preface it a little bit more, I guess, but when you're analyzing this process, right, and you're trying to say, okay, like we've got all this data that's sitting in Applied Epic, and then you've got Salesforce on the other end that's saying, hey, we can take whatever you want and we can make it look however you want. You just need to tell us what you want, right? Yeah. What data do you want? How do you want it to look? And so then we're like, well, we've heard people say, well, like, we don't know what is the most important and impactful data because it's all sitting in Applied. Yeah. So like, what are the desires, the top desires of these agencies, and it could boil down to some of their problems, but what are their top desires of getting this data out and what are they doing with it?
So what I'll answer that with is, and I'm not going to do the it depends because I hate those answers. So like, I'll give you some real stuff there. Is like, so your sales team is really trying to understand, sales and marketing team is really trying to understand the life cycle of the lead, the number of touch points, the what is your contract value, what's your revenue value, and how do we know that we're actually profitable on a specific CSP, and then how do we know an AM is profitable? So when you look at what an insurance agency is, they are ultimately a break off from a carrier that says, I've got better sales skills than you, so I'm going to go and sell your stuff for you. So they are a sales driven organization. So the biggest things they want to design better are, where are my leads coming from? Am I sure that these leads are good? How many touches does it take for me to get that lead across the line? And what am I actually profitable on by bringing these leads in? And what sort of behaviors do I need to drive in the organization to make sure that we're bringing in profitable business? Because there's 0 point in bringing in a $1,000 policy at 15% commission, and then you still have to split some of that commission, and you're spending 100 hours to bring that on and use an exorbitant number, but you get the point. So that ultimately is a very challenging bit. And the trick with that as a sales-driven organization is Salesforce does a wonderful job about telling you how they can solve all of that, but then they don't have the data to solve it or with which to solve it. So you end up being in this position of buying the silver bullet because the platform will solve my business issues, versus identifying the business issue and reversing in platforms and strategies that fit the business solution. And that's often a mistake agencies make. Being in sales myself, we do tend to be, as salespeople, driven by the bright, shiny object. Cool, it's going to fix something. Let's go and fix it. And let's be gung-ho and brave and go and fix it. And then you realize that you're actually not identifying the business issue. And the business issue is, how well am I running my sales pipeline and how profitable is that? the differentiation between that versus an operational user versus a finance user is quite distinct. But if I had to look at, like, take a step back and say, like, what is an agency ultimately most interested in, because they are a sales-driven organization, it's getting a hold of that process and getting that data flowing between another CRM, so whether it's HubSpot or Dynamic CRM or Salesforce, and their AMS.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there that you talk through that I think just hits the nail on the head with different agencies and the challenges that we face around these different tools. And, you know, we've all seen it. There's now a bunch of shiny objects out there. I mean, you could be implementing new tech every day, and it all would be really cool. But the ultimate way that you're successful there is what you mentioned, is starting with the business problem, starting with the problem you're trying to solve, and making sure then that you go find the tool to solve it. Because there are a lot of shiny objects out there too that don't really solve a major business problem. They do cool stuff.
Yeah,
at the
absolutely.
At the end of the day, they're not really solving one of your main problems. And so that is definitely the first step that you need to take as an agency owner or somebody in this position that's evaluating tech, is what problems do I have and how do I want to solve it, right?
So we use a very strict methodology as a sales organization ourselves. It's gap selling, so it's not a secret one. If you've read gap selling, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But ultimately, what it says is look for the gaps in your processes or in your structure, and go and say, like, how does Synatic fill into those? So we are always hunting for business issues. We never ever pitch. So we spend, like, if you look at how we position Synatic, we have one positioning slide. Basically, it says what it says over my right shoulder: get the right data to the right person at the right time. It says more than that, like talks a little bit of tech, and then we go, we don't actually care about that. What does this mean to you? I don't care what my platform can do if it's not relevant to you. So how do I make that relevant to your world? And what agencies almost need to start doing is start, like, gap selling themselves on their system and saying, like, where are the gaps around that, and develop business needs around that, because that's actually all we're really eliciting in our sales process is, where are the gaps in your process at the moment where you could get data moving between different systems, and that would create exponential efficiency on your business.
Absolutely. Well, so taking the conversation around data a step further, I'm curious, because we talked about this a little bit before too, is that we have a ton of data, in whether it's in Epic or at the carrier level, that we collect, right, and we bring through our doors. But traditionally, specifically on the independent agency side, we're very poor, very, very bad at using that data for anything that is tangible and brings value to our firms, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm curious if you have even some examples of firms that you've seen that are doing some really cool stuff with the data. Maybe it's ways that they're using Synatic, to move data, but just how can we, or how should we be looking at, that data that we ultimately are bringing in and should have access to, and what could we be doing with that, that could bring us value?
Yeah. And I love that question. So my first response to that is, like, break this freaking myth that, like, agencies don't have any of the data, carriers have all of the data. Like, I call straight up BS on that. Like, it's gotta go away from this talk track that the agency world has developed, and we're part of as well, and we're trying to help break that, is, like, break that mold of thinking of, like, our carriers sit with the data, so they do the cool stuff with the data. We don't have much to deal with, like, so we're not going to do anything. Like, crap. Like, call it straight up. It's rubbish. Yeah. So, like, there are such easy, attainable things we can do now. And I'll give you some real examples with data that are so simple yet so powerful. So a simple example is commercial insurance. So commercial insurance, you need to start your re-quoting phase 90 days before you get to cancellation, or sorry, end of policy. So what we want to do is somehow make that a action for somebody to do. So it doesn't help me, it helps me partly to say, Elliot, here's a report of the policies that are cancelled within 90 days, but nothing's dictating that Elliot must go and do that. It's a report. And then Ryan, who's managing Elliot, doesn't have a way to go and say to Elliot, why the hell aren't you re-quoting these? So a simple thing we do is we pull all the policies out. We have this in our data warehouse inside Synatic, and we take that data and we say, we're going to automate that to whatever CRM you're using as a task. So we take a policy, if it's got anywhere between 0 and 5 days from the 90 days of end of policy, we create a task in Salesforce, and then Salesforce uses that to go and create its structure of what a policy renewal process looks like. So now it goes and says, Elliot has a case within Salesforce with a set of tasks assigned to him that he can then assign out to other people, and then it becomes a to-do item. Now what we do is we use all of this cool stuff within Salesforce to go and say, Ryan can go and get a widget that says, here's Elliot's tasks that are outstanding, here's Jamie's tasks, and here's Alex's tasks. Ryan can now go and manage those tasks appropriately and say, are there any risk items here where we haven't done things that we should have done that are going to result in us losing this or have liability due to E&O? Like those are, it's an equivalent risk there. It's a double-edged sword. So like that's a cool example, and it really isn't that difficult. And what we've got to break this mindset of is saying, well, that's unattainable. I don't know how to do that. Like it's totally attainable now. It is 100% attainable, not just with Synatic. Like that's not a Synatic pitch. That's just like there are people out there and platforms out there that can do it.
Yeah, that's cool. Do I need Salesforce to do that, or can what if I just have my agency management system and
No, I was using Salesforce as an example just because Salesforce it's fairly ubiquitous in the industry. It's like a 80-90% uptake across the industry, especially once you get into the upper SMB, into the mid-market. But no, absolutely not.
Yeah. And I asked that because I wonder sometimes if that's what goes through people's heads, well, but I don't have Salesforce, or well, we don't have this, and that's not necessarily the issue, nor is, it doesn't necessarily have to be a technological solution either. It's a new insurtech. It could just be a change of process, or something on your end that you look at a piece of information differently, and that alters a process or something like that you can use data to influence things. Oftentimes everybody goes to, well, it's too, like you said earlier, it's the dollar sign and the difficulty of integration type of thing, and it doesn't have to necessarily go that route, right?
No, it doesn't. And like ultimately, so if we take a step back and look at what Synatic is we're a data processing platform that is designed to bring solutions to the mid-market. So what you've ended up with is, what the market has ended up with is a lot of really expensive solutions, like a MuleSoft, Informatica. If people if they know the space, they'll know those names and they'll know the price tags attached to them. And then a lot of simple solutions which do cool things for what they're used for. Like Zapier is a good solution at its fit for purpose. When you need to do complex data transformation, Zapier kind of starts to fall over pretty rapidly. And I'm not knocking Zapier with that. It has its place. Like if you need to move contacts from Salesforce to MailChimp so that you can automate emailing, gold, go use Zapier. It's really good at that. When you need to calculate the complexities around renewal dates and for specific lines of business on a policy, and then direct them to different people because they are, different CSPs look after different lines of business or whatever it may be, then that's where Zapier kind of starts to fall over.
Totally.
That makes total sense, Jamie. I was trying to go back a little bit to, your example on pulling data out and getting it into Salesforce. Two questions. Number one, like, is Salesforce ever bringing you and your company in to help facilitate this with people that are like vetting Salesforce? But then, secondly, like, going back to your myth and some of the hesitancies that agencies face in implementing a strategy like this, is around cost. And so, do you help agencies kind of understand, if I spend, let's say I need to spend $100,000 to get this off the ground. And I don't know, I'm just spitballing depending on what systems you have. But if you don't have Salesforce today and you got to get the integrations and you got to get the data and whatever, let's just say it's $100 grand. Are you then like helping them understand the ROI that they can have on that $100,000 spend by being able to manipulate their data in different ways? And like,
Correct.
Can you give me an example of that?
So an example of the actual figures on the ROI, or are you looking for an example of an engagement like that?
An example on ROI and like how you got to the point of being able to show them like, hey, this is smart. You need to go get a CRM that's capable. You need to hire a Synatic, and you need to buy the integrations with Applied Epic and everything else to get this off the ground. And if you do this, here's the value that you're going to get back.
Yeah. So go first question first. So do Salesforce ever bring us into deals to co-pitch? So you're going to be able to read between the lines, but that's an awkwardly timed question. So I can't say anything. I can't directly answer that, but it's an ongoing discussion, and a very positive discussion of mine. I can't there's stuff happening there. The reality is that anything for any solution, this is IT solutions all round, anything that makes that solution embed more into the customer's world is beneficial to co-sell with. So that is one of our strategies, and we follow that strategy both from Vertifor's side as well as Salesforce's side as well as Epic's side. Like, we want to work with them to make it better, not work against them and be seen as public enemy number one. In terms of the ROI question, so I'll give you a carrier example of that because I've got that off the top of my head quickly. So for Tokyo Marine, one of the things we solved for them was the ability for them to pull history around a legal claim. So legal claim comes in, their process was then the account manager had to go and pull together policies, policy renewals, claim information, emails, phone calls. Manually, it took them about 2 weeks. So what we did was we used and this was, for once, it was relatively speaking a click of a button. I know people say that too often, but this was. And they could go and put in the claim number and it would fetch all ancillary information. Well, Synatic would fetch all ancillary information, wrap it into a zip file, drop it into like a 10 meg zip file into the user's inbox, and then they forward it on to legal. So those are the kind of ROIs we've seen. That was a monstrous ROI because it literally took it from 2 weeks to 5 minutes kind of thing. One of the other definitive ROIs we've seen is just is with PSA. They've been acquired by Hilb since, which we're not working with as well. But what PSA were doing is they were manually pulling data out of AMS 360 and Benefit Point so that they could collate that in Excel and then running pivot tables off of that. And that would take them usually around about a person week at the end of every month to go and collate all of that data. And literally the ROI was probably 10 times there at least, if not more than. It's hard to calculate that because the business grew through that as well. So yeah, it would have been an exponential spend of time if they kept on going with a manual strategy.
Wow.
Yeah, and those things exist. just everywhere in our industry, it seems like.
They do, and unfortunately, it's because I think it's because people haven't had an affordable way to fix it. So I think that's a big driver. I think it's scared people off. I mean, we went in to one customer who had been quoted a figure on MuleSoft, and our solution price came in at literally 30% of that. So it was laughable. It verging. I mean, like we literally dropped our jaw when that was the price they were given. It was to integrate 3 systems. So it's cost and it's a perception issue. Is people think that data is this big, hairy, scary thing that we need to be frightened of, and it's not. It can be your friend. It can enable you. Just open yourself up to it and take the first step is often the biggest challenge. The first step is the hardest.
Yeah, how do you find? I would agree with that 100%, and I think it a lot of times it's this big ambiguous gray cloud that everybody talks about data, but I'm just an insurance guy that doesn't know much about what you're talking about. But how do you? Because I feel like I know the answer to this, but how do you simplify that conversation to, again, somebody that's running an insurance agency and is hearing this data thing all the time and like, yeah, I know I got a bunch of data, but I don't even know what that means. So how do you simplify that conversation? How does Synatic help, really make that an easy to understand process as to how can I begin to actually use this data? And we've talked a little bit about it already, but just to hit that point home, I'm curious to kind of see how you'd respond to that.
The most important thing is we don't talk about data. So we talk about what is your gap?
True.
What is your hole? Like shove all the other buzzwords out of there. Like don't throw AI at me. Don't throw BI at me. We don't put any of those buzzwords onto the PowerPoint to try and make ourselves look smart. Like it's just like what is your gap? Gap cell. Understand your business problem. Term it and phrase it as a business issue, not as a technical issue. We can sort out the technical bit. We've got that skill set. Tell me what your business problem is. And that's 100% of the focus. Never, ever pitch a technical solution we never pitch technical. We don't even bring a look at Synatic into the first meeting, sometimes the first 2 meetings. That discovery process is all about where's your business at? What would you like to get better? If there was something you could resolve today, what would you resolve with a click of your finger? If there is something that you would look back in 6 months' time at and say, I regret not having fixed that, what would that be? What is that business issue? And phrase it entirely as that. Because the thing is, people, again, it comes back to what agencies are. Agencies are typically by and large made up of sales folk and very heavyweight sales folk. And yes, they've got operational people like yourselves, but they are by and large made up like that. If you go and try and pitch heavy tech solutions to salespeople, like it ain't gonna fly. Like and be pragmatic about that. Be honest about that's what the industry is. And then cool. Well, let's talk about your business issues then. Let's not talk about data and stuff.
Yeah, that's spot on, because that is what we're referencing. And I think when you keep it, well, it's like somebody not knowing the ins and outs of an insurance policy. If we start using a bunch of insurance jargon, they're not going to understand. Totally. But if we say, hey, this coverage, here's what it's going to do for you, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they don't 100%. Need to know the term. Yep. Yeah. So
you don't talk about an accord form to a customer. Yeah. You're never going to use the word accord. The customer's going to sit there like, what do you mean by an accord form? I don't know what that is. There's your stuff to sort out. You can position it as an application form to get you done with the right coverage. That's a much better way of phrasing it.
Yeah, totally.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, this is a topic, Jamie, that I feel like we could go miles deep on, because I think it's, our industry has a ton of opportunity to begin to, solve business problems through, through data analytics, through better process at the end of the day. And I think this has been a good, probably tip of the iceberg. conversation. So maybe there's some future conversations for us down the road too. But I've enjoyed it. I appreciate your time. Like I said, I appreciate you jumping on at 7 p.m. So
Cool. Well, thanks for having me. I'm just happy to be here. Happy to be chatting. Good chat. So
awesome. Is there anywhere in particular that people can find you or get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Synatic?
It's pretty easy. Just Jamie, like you see it on the screen, JAMIE at synatic.com.
Perfect. Well, reach out if you want to know more, and they've got a pretty awesome tool. So, and I guess process as to how they help solve problems. So, thanks, Jamie. We'll catch you on the next one.
Cool.
Thanks, Jamie.
Eddie.
Take care.
Ciao. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Getting Past the Premium. We are excited to continue breaking down barriers and finding solutions together. If you would like to reach out regarding anything you heard in today's episode, find links and contact info in the description. Until next time, have a great day, and let's continue getting past the premium.